Take care! Halt! Right! Right!
Join us as two of our Cub Scouts lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Post the color. Infantry, take your ease.
Shoulder, file up. Order, file up. Stand down, rest.
On behalf of the town of Southampton, thank you all for coming. It's a marvelous turnout. Some people have worked very hard for this. I'm going to ask the Reverend Howland to come forward for the invocation.
Let us pray. O steadfast Creator God, we gather here today to honor and remember long ago citizens of Southampton who left this community to join others fighting to preserve and unite this United States, which is our home. Their faces are forgotten, their height, the color of their hair, the way they smile, the furrows on their brows, their occupations. Yet the roots of this town were built and strengthened by their lives. The foundation of our town rests on the sacrifices of limb and life made by these people, as they dedicated their lives that we might live today in this blessed spot. Let us now remember and honor them as we call upon you to sanctify these monuments that preserve their memory and their names. We ask this in your good name. Amen.
Representing our select board, Jackie Spears.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Southampton dedication of the Veterans Memorial Monument. Whether it is a coincidence or just good luck, it's usually a beautiful day whenever I'm involved with either a preservation or dedication of veterans parks. Sadly, the men whose names are engraved on these two stunning monuments will never see another beautiful day, feel the sun on their face, or come home to our beloved town of Southampton. They sacrificed their lives for our country, for our freedom. By dedicating these monuments here today, we remember and mark their dignified service. Their names will forever be etched in our memory, and their service will never be forgotten. The town would like to take this time to thank Virginia Ahart, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee, for making this project possible. Ruth Bernier, Assistant Town Clerk, and her husband David, for their unwavering commitment and work in organizing this event, and Ed Colley, Superintendent and Highway Department and Selectman, among many other titles in our town, and his work to make sure that these monuments stand tall for generations to come. The town would especially like to thank Army veteran Richard Prairie for his hard work and dedication in honoring our veterans. Through his astute research and unyielding tenacity, he has found the names of the wars that our brave veterans have served in. It is with great pleasure that I give Mr. Prairie a certificate of recognition from the Select Board at this time. Thank you all for coming and have a wonderful Veterans Day.
Next, the commander of our American Legion, Richard LeClerc.
It's on behalf of the Post 168 American Legion. It is my honor to take part in this dedication of some of our country's first veterans, and forevermore keep their names in our memory.
Thank you, Richard. Among the infantry, we have Alan Torrey. He's a descendant of Calvin Torrey, a veteran of the 25th Continental Infantry who was buried in Center Cemetery. Alan, would you come forward, please? To give a brief description of where these guys fought during the American Revolution.
Good afternoon. In the centennial address delivered by a son of Southampton in 1841, the writer said it was the men of little towns that gathered around stark and mourning. The glory of General Gates was won for him by soldiers from the Connecticut Valley and towns like Southampton. It was our ancestors and their neighbors who dared the horrors of the wilderness and of a Canadian winter with Arnold. Lieutenant Joel Clapp and Nathaniel Loomis were in the French and Indian War. After the capture of Fort William Henry, they were stripped and plundered and pursued 14 miles by savages. By the way, they got away. Corporal Samuel Edwards and Elias Lyman took part in the memorable siege of Louisburg. Eliakim Wright and Ebenezer Kinsley were slain while attacking Crown Point. Sergeant Jacob Pomeroy, Joseph Bartlett, Eliza Bundy, Captain Samuel Coleman, Silas Pomeroy, Gad Pomeroy, Phineas Searle, Noble Squires were among those who lived to return home. On April 20th, 1775, Southampton received word that the regulars had killed 8 men in Lexington. A war had begun. Men on swift horses had brought the news to our doors. Minutemen, who had been under training for months previous, answered the alarm. Some of them literally left their plows in the furrows, and in a few hours a company of 46 men were on the march to the scene of the conflict. Captain Abner Pomeroy, Sergeant Lemuel Rust, Sergeant Gershom Pomeroy, Corporal Stephen Clapp, Corporal Samuel Edwards, and Corporal Ezekiel Woods, with 14 privates enlisted for 8-month service at Cambridge. Stephen Clapp died of a fever near Boston. Private Ebenezer D. was afterwards in the Quebec Division. Samuel Burt was another of those Minutemen. Other Revolutionary soldiers were Obadiah Ferry, killed and scalped by the Indians at Fort Edward in 1777. Elijah Edwards Sr. was in his company. Stephen Sheldon died in a wagon in Gates' army. Aaron Strong was killed by a cannonball in the entrenchments of Saratoga. A short time previous, his wife had a premonition of the time and manner of his death. Oliver Pomeroy died in the service. He was the son of Captain Pomeroy and a grandson of General Seth Pomeroy, the Bunker Hill famous commander. Captain Lemuel Pomeroy was of the same family. Gad Clark was taken ill while in the Army and died soon after his return. A son of John Hall is believed to have died in the Army. Ebenezer Pomeroy attained the rank of captain. Noah Lyman, son of Deacon Elias Lyman, entered the Army as a Minuteman. He returned home but died on January 2nd, 1776 at the age of 23 of a disease contracted through service. Gad Pomeroy was in the Army for some time and died February 14th, 1884, age 75. His grandson, Amos and Daniel, were soldiers in the 27th Mass Regiment during the Civil War. Daniel Pomeroy was mortally wounded at Cold Harbor June 1st, 1864, and died at Arlington, Virginia on July 26, 1864. Amos Pomeroy was wounded at McBurn in 1862 and taken prisoner in March 1865, but released and returned home at the close of the war. William Daddy entered the Army and died of smallpox at Ticonderoga in 1779, leaving a wife and 4 children, the oldest scarcely 8 years old. Martin Burt, brother of Mrs. Daddy, was a soldier and took part in a campaign that ended in Burgoyne's surrender. Solomon Searle, Darius Searle, and David Searle, all brothers, enlisted, and Darius died while in service. Sergeant Francis Elliott enlisted when he was 16 years old. Lieutenant Elijah Bascom died at Ticonderoga in 1776. Lemuel and Aaron Bates were both brothers. They were both in the Canadian expedition and barely escaped from hardship, cold, and starvation. Philip Williams was killed and scalped by Indians. William Daddy and Elias Lyman were among the enlisted. Those young men enlisted and served all for freedom, self-government, and for the future of their families. Many descendants of these courageous soldiers still walk the path that fathers made and work the lands their fathers worked, while many more have gone from our lives and are scattered over land and sea. They all take honorable pride in the achievements of their ancestors who helped give birth to this land of the free and home of the brave.
Great pleasure. I introduce Mr. Barry Searle. He has a letter that was written by one of his ancestors during the Civil War. Mr. Searle.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to be part of this ceremony. To honor these men who sacrificed so much, so willingly, so that we can all be standing here today in freedom. I'd like to thank publicly Ruth Bernier for transcribing this letter from the original handwriting into a typewritten document, and also Richard Ferrari for his research. To put this into context, Reuben Searle was born in 1844. He was a descendant of Gideon Searle, son of Nathaniel. He was 20 years old at the time he wrote this letter. He wrote it to his mother, Jane. He was in Company D, the 37th Mass Volunteers. The letter begins towards the end of the Battle of the Wilderness, which is famously one of the most horrific battles of the war between the states. This was the first battle of Grant's 1864 overland campaign against Lee and the Confederate Army of Virginia. The battle was tactically inconclusive, as Grant disengaged and continued his offensive elsewhere. Also killed in this same battle was Charles Henry Searle, born 1829, who we honored a couple years ago up the hill at the Center Cemetery. He died the day before Reuben wrote this letter. He didn't even know it at the time. And just for a sense of perspective, we found in the family diary Orlando Searle, who's a descendant of an ancestor of mine, and also Ted Hendrick. That same day, he was plowing the fields, and he made a note that he got his oats in. So life continued on even then. So here is the letter. Virginia, May 7th, 1864, headquarters, 6th Corps of the Chankaville Turnpike, 8 miles from Fredericksburg, Virginia. Dear Mother, this has been a dreadful fight, and it is not near ended. I have news that is painful to write, but you must know it. John Hyde and George Walcott are killed. At least men that are wounded from our company say so. Our regiment is pretty badly cut up. I have not heard from the boys since yesterday. Then there were 4 or 5 killed and from 10 to 15 wounded. John Hyde and Walcott are the only Southampton boys I have heard from. I have not heard from Walcott so direct as from Johnny. I think there is no doubt but what John is killed, shot through the head. They have not been fighting quite as hard today. We drove very little last eve and got into rather close quarters. I think we have drove them a little today. There's been 2 horses and 1 man killed and 3 horses wounded. Yesterday morning I went into the hospital early in the morning and I stayed until 6 at night. I have also been in this forenoon. I dressed most of the boys' wounds from my company and several from the Mass 11th and the regiments. I tell you, Mother, a man don't know how much he can go through till he tries. I thought I could not go in and help, but when I saw our poor fellows suffering, I did not hesitate. I got so I could help do the worst, such as amputating limbs, arms and feet, etc. May 8th. I have seen the boys, what is left, today. I got to add 1 more to the list killed from Southampton. That is George Clark. Fred said there was no doubt but what the 3 named are killed. Monday, May 9th. This is the 6th day we have been on a move. There has been no fighting today, but probably will be before night. One of my tent mates, Charlie Mansfield, saw Ed Hyde yesterday. He was all right. Then he felt dreadful about to hear that John was killed, as of course he would. The 3 were all good boys, and they are greatly missed by all in the company. John has been the life of the company and ready to do his duty whenever called upon. I hear that Phil Hyde's brother in the 10th Mass is killed. You can tell Mr. Hyde's folks. The last I heard from the 10th, they have lost about 130 killed and wounded. The 37th has lost more than that. There is no mail goes out, nor we have no communication. I shall send this the first opportunity. From 10 to 1,500 rebel prisoners have just passed. We have lost a great many and taken a great many. I think we have the best of them now, but we can't tell how it is coming out. Both sides fight desperate, and one side or the other has got to whip before it is ended. I would write where we were if I knew, but I don't. All I know is we are going to Richmond. If we can, the last 1 big orders. I don't know what he meant by that. There was never so bad a time for wounded. We've had to leave several hundred on the field there to die, not able to walk or to help themselves. Some have a leg off, others arms or feet, etc. You can form but little idea of the horrors of war. I hope we shall have good success and settle it up this summer. Oh, General Sedgwick has just been shot through the head. He is dying. My heart is so full, I can write no more. And 3 days later, yes, the general is dead and gone. 3 of his staff started with the corpse for home in Connecticut, night before last. No general in this army, unless Meade or Grant, would be missed as he is. Every man had confidence in him, but he was too brave and ventured too near. The night before he was killed, I slept within a rod of him. He laying on the ground with his clothes on and no shelter or tent of any kind to cover him. He unsaddled his own horse that same night and used the saddle for a pillow. Thursday, May 12th. It is 8 days since we started, and 7 days they have been fighting. I have not seen or heard from the boys since the 8th. It has been very dry and dusty till last night. We had a thunder shower, and today it is raining hard. Friday morning, May 13th. The Army has lost in killed and wounded from 20,000 to 30,000. The mail leaves today. I will add a few lines and send this along. I saw the lieutenant colonel of our regiment this morning. He was wounded in the foot. He says William Kingsley is killed, making 4 from Southampton. He did not know whether there were any others from Southampton or not. It has been the hardest battle of the war, and it is not over yet. We took a great many prisoners and guns yesterday. Excuse the dirt, for I am covered. If I get any more news, I will write. I must close for now, for I am very busy and have to leave in a minute or 2. In haste, your son, Reuben. P.S. Lieutenant Wright is in command of the Corps. He came back to Southampton, and his brother was one of the first settlers in Kansas, and he followed him out there, so that's where he ended up. He had a good, long, rich life, Reuben Searle. Thank you.
Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our state senator, Mr. Michael Napa.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for the invitation to join you all today, and thank you especially for being here on such a beautiful Veterans Day afternoon. I want to thank the stories from Barry and the recitation of the Revolutionary history. That's the history of your hometown, the history of this part of the Commonwealth, the history of this part of New England, which is still as important today as it was when those young men were writing it way back in the day. You can imagine that Searle boy writing at the age of 20, scared out of his wits. No different than today, somebody perhaps emailing from a time zone far away from us to a family very worried and very concerned. That tradition and that history and the 236 years since the Republic was declared in 1776 continues on today. So that those stories, whether they're 150 years old from the Civil War, 236 years old from the Revolution, and we're represented here by Ed Barucki 71 years ago at Pearl Harbor. Our friends who served in Vietnam, we thank them for their service. Next year will mark the 40th anniversary of the end of Vietnam. But here in Southampton, we continue to remember the important role that veterans had in our history. I was at an event earlier in the day, and they mentioned, one of the speakers, that this is the first year since World War I that there is no longer a veteran of the World War to End All Wars alive on the planet. The last year ever. When you think about the gravity of a statement like that, when the world mobilized against a threat, you can see how the passage of time can come quickly when things tend to be forgotten. But I'm so proud of this community that you're not forgetting part of your rich, rich past. With the individuals whose names are on here, some who served, some who never returned to their hometown, because that's what's important for these young children, for the boys and Girl Scouts that serve in this community, the children in the schools. It's that legacy of remembering the sacrifice and the service of the veterans. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for remembering all of those who served this community as we continue to remember those who serve our nation in time of war. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Senator. We're very honored. We have a Southampton boy, Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Fedora, member of the 104th Fire Wing. Thank you. Thank you all for inviting me here today to be a part of this dedication ceremony. Veterans are a very special class of people, and in a shrinking demographic within the national landscape, with less than 1% of the U.S. population currently serving in the line of defense, and less than 7% of the current population having the honor to call themselves veterans. We must take the opportunities like this to recognize them and to thank them for what they have done. And according to the National Census data, the veteran is the most rapidly shrinking demographic, decreasing at the rate of about 1,800 per day. As Sir Winston Churchill said in 1940, as the Second World War was beginning over the skies of Britain, never was so much owed by so many to so few. I, along with every other veteran, value the freedoms that so many take for granted. As a culture, we Americans have never felt the oppression of a dictator or felt the bounds of slavery. As a culture, we don't know a world where we can't speak our minds and feel freely to practice our faith. And for those reasons, we as a culture do not appreciate those freedoms in the same vein as the cultures that live those convictions and struggles. As a society, it's hard to understand that those great freedoms are not free. And it is hard to fathom that our freedoms are truly and forever tied to the sacrifices of so many. In every major conflict, our brave men and women and veterans rose to defeat the foe that threatened our way of life, and many times bearing the ultimate sacrifice. Often for people they would never meet, we must not forget that our veterans are willing to die for generations of Americans that have not yet been born. Today, we also forever engrave in stone the names of those from Southampton who made this sacrifice. To put it in perspective, let me remind you of the sacrifice. On those memorials right there, King George's War, 8% of the male population of Massachusetts died. In the French and Indian War, 104,000 wounded or killed. The Revolutionary War, 26,000. The War of 1812, 23 killed in action while 11,000 more died of diseases. The Civil War, 620,000 lives lost. In the Spanish-American War, 11,000. More recently, World War I, we lost 320,000 service members, and in World War II, 1.1 million. In Korea, 128,000, and 211,000 perished in Vietnam. Over the last decade, we've lost over 48,000 to the global war on terror, and each one of those veterans did it for us. Never forget the cost of freedom that's been paid with the blood from our veterans. There's a poem that was often read on Veterans Day, and it was written by Father Edwin O'Brien, Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Marine Corps. It goes, "It is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us the freedom of the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us the freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the campus organizer, who has given us the freedom to demonstrate, and it is the soldier, not the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. It is a soldier who salutes the flag, serves under the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, and who gives the protester the right to burn the flag. Our calling is great, and the need is greater, and the satisfaction of a veteran has in knowing he or she was prepared to sacrifice it all, so that we as a country can enjoy the blessing God has bestowed us, is unexplainable. With all the changes in world politics, there is one thing that has not changed, and that is the call to arms. Just last Friday, I had the honor of attending the Veterans Day ceremony at the North School, and it was humbled and honored to be sitting among the veterans that day, ranging from World War II to Afghanistan. I was sitting there that day, and I realized each member who serves has one thing in common. Despite the uniform they wear, each and every one of us swears an allegiance to support and defend the Constitution of this United States. It is this sacred oath that binds the generations of Americans together, a true kinship tied by a bond of service. I leave with one request, and that is that each of you take a moment to shake the hand of a veteran and ask them to tell you about their service and why they did what they did. I challenge you to learn from their humility and their dedication to service. They are Americans, they are our neighbors, our friends, our relatives, the men and women you see every day, common people who have done very uncommon things for all of us. I'm confident you will learn something about yourself from their answer, and I'm confident you'll better understand freedom. If you're a veteran in the audience, if you could please raise your hand so everybody can recognize you. Honor the veterans' families as well, as they make the sacrifices a reality. I would like to close by gifting this flag to this town of Southampton. I flew it over the Arabian Gulf while deployed last summer. The flag is in a certificate right in front of me here, and the certificate reads, "Let it be known that this United States flag was flown in honor of the town of Southampton, Massachusetts on 15 June 2012. Aboard an F-15 Sea Eagle from the 131st Expeditionary Fighting Squadron deployed from Barnes Air National Guard Base, Westfield, Mass, in support of overseas contingency operations. Tail number 022. Thank you all. Accepting the flag, we are selecting Jackie Stewart. Someone can stay here, please. Mr. Curley. The architect of all this, Rick Perry. That's on my glasses. Thank you. It was a pleasure to work on this project, along with the following: David and Ruth Ann Bernier, Elaine Kucha, Reggie Shea Sullivan, Jeff Colley, Bill Slattery, Roger Ball, Todd Jarrah. Without the town's interest for community preservation and the taxpayers, this would not have been possible. Thank you very much. Firing details, to your position. The wreath will be laid by Mr. Prairie and Lieutenant Colonel Cigar. Good work, gentlemen.
Let us pray. We give you thanks, O God above, that we can freely gather here today to remember. We honor those who lived and died so long ago, for they formed this community we call home. Let us go now, recalling these friends from long ago, and let us take with us this memory of their service, for without them we would not be who we are, a hamlet at the foothills of the Berkshires in western Massachusetts that we call home. With grateful hearts, may we greet one another and, like those of long ago, go out to serve. Amen and amen.
Thank you, Reverend Collins. And thank you all for coming to help us honor our patriot ancestors. This concludes the ceremony. Please join us for cider and donuts here on the gazebo.